Hello everybody and welcome to how to create a B2B networking session. This is our tutorial based on the webinar. So it is the information without the interactiveness. If you want to get this information right away, then this is your best option. So I'm your host, Santiago Castillo. I'm the Customer Success Manager of Eventtia, and I will be presenting you how to create a B2B networking session. So right before starting, I'm going to show you something. And it is, if you come to the knowledge base of Eventtia, which can be accessed through the help desk, you will be able to go ahead and check here in Introduction to Eventtia how to create your first event, this tutorial of how to create an event in 30 minutes. Well, actually, that tutorial would be a better tutorial if you're searching for more general information. And if you already know how to create an event in 30 minutes, then this would be a right tutorial to continue with, because this is how to actually create a B2B networking session. So I'm going to start with the base of you already knowing how to create attendee types, how to create websites, and so on. And we'll get a deeper focus on the B2B networking sessions. So we're going to go through five different steps. First of all, we're going to have an introduction. Then we're going to learn how to build a B2B session. Then we're going to learn how to create the actual networking profiles. After that, we're going to see the attendees view of those networking profiles that they will create. And in the end, we're going to see your view, so the admin's view of actually those profiles and in general of the B2B networking session. So we're going to go one by one. And we'll start, of course, with our introduction of all the terms and so on, so everything is clear since the start, since the very beginning. So we're going to take a look at the definitions of B2B matchmaking, at the registration forms, at the networking forms. We're going to take a look at the networking space for the attendees, or for the networking attendees. We're going to see what is the register and what is the login and how to differentiate them. And we're going to take a look at the attendee dashboard. So let's get started. So first of all, I'm going to use throughout this video, and in general in Eventtia we use throughout the platform the words B2B matchmaking and networking as basically synonyms. There is a slight difference, but in Eventtia, the networking module, when we speak about networking, it's about B2B matchmaking, meaning businesses or commercial enterprises making matches or making meetings with other different enterprises or companies. In most of the cases, however, we do have some cases in which they use it for people, and you can really use it in very different situations. But in general, we use it for matchmaking between businesses, usually when you have some buyers, some suppliers, and you have some requesting of meetings going on, in which a platform is useful in order not to have the same people asking for the same spaces, and having a very specific order, and being able to assign the tables, and being able to make all the different stuff that a B2B matchmaking event requires. So that's why we have this platform. So just to start, so networking is more a broad definition, but B2B matchmaking is a networking dynamic based on enabling the attendees to schedule short one-on-one meetings during the event with those people who are important and relevant for their businesses or careers. Your guests have the absolute control over the networking dynamic, this way being able to build truly meaningful relationships at your event. Okay, so that's our definition of our B2B matchmaking and networking form. And having all of this clear, we can go ahead and see a bit more of the practical part of Eventtia regarding the networking. So first of all, it's important to differentiate between the registration form and the networking form. The registration form is the one that you do through the Attendee Types registration form, and that is more for people, that's more personal. So for instance, if I am Santiago from Eventtia, I'm going to fill out my information of Santiago, my email, where I'm coming from, where do I work, maybe my ID, etc. That's more of my personal information of the registration form. And then As opposed to that, the networking form will be my company's information. So I'm going to rather say, what is the company name? What is the annual budget? What is the position that I have inside the company? What are the services of the company, etc., etc. Of course, what is the logo and so on. And that will all be filled up in the networking form. So in a nutshell, registration form is personal, networking form is corporate. And then the login info, which is also part of the networking form, is where the attendees can put a username and a password for their registration later on, or they're entering later on to the login of the networking space. This is very important because sometimes people tell me, I don't know my username. And of course, you don't know it because you have to create it. The idea is that you will create as an attendee the username and the password in order to be able to access to the login. So just to be clear about that, username and passwords are something that you create in order to be able to access to the networking space. And as I told you, registration form is set up on the registration types, and networking form is set up on the networking profiles. And I'm going to show you a bit more about that later. As for the registration, this would be a normal registration block where, like in the website, where people will be able to select whether they're buyers, they're providers, or they can select in general their attendee types. And they will fill up, of course, the form that we already saw, the complete form, registration plus networking form. And then once they have submitted and they have been accepted at the event, they will be able to access to the networking space. And the networking space will have one block like this, which is the login. It's going to say login. It could be on the same tab. It could be on a different tab. It really depends on the event. But normally you'll see a square like this that says login, where the person can put the username, the password, and click on login in order to access to the networking space. So those are in general all the little things that you need to know before building a B2B session. Now we can go ahead and build a B2B session, giving it a name, giving it a location, some dates, the time slots, and the meeting durations. So let's go ahead and do that on the platform. So I'm going to enter with my Eventtia login as a user in Eventtia's login. You don't know where that is, it's on the home where it says login, and we can enter here. And then being here, what we can do is we can click on the event where we have the matchmaking event, the B2B matchmaking event, and we can go directly to networking. As I told you, for instance, here registration has already been set up on the website and so on. But here we're going to focus on the networking. So I click here on networking. That's my first step. And I'm going to create a whole new networking session. So I come here to new. And when I click on new, I will be able to give it, of course, a name and so on. So I'm going to say that it's called the networking session that is going to be on the main room. I'm gonna give it a start date. So let's say that this is going to be on the 25th of June, 2020, from 9 a.m. to the 26th of June at 6 p.m. And these would be the dates in which the actual networking is going to happen. For instance, I could have an event that comes from 25th of June to the 26th, but the networking goal is only held on the 26th. So I would go to the 26th and just select 9, and this will only be held on the 26th. I will do it for the 2 days because in this case, this event is going to be for both days. But what is important to take here into account is that actually you will be able to set up different timeframes for the networking regarding the total timeframes of the event. So now we have it set it up, 25th at 9 a.m. to 26th at 6 p.m. And now what we can do is define a date and time to stop attendees from requesting meetings. So as it says there, after these times, attendees will not be able to request more meetings. They can accept the meetings that have been requested, or they can get their requested meetings accepted, or they can also cancel them, but they won't be able to go into another's profile and and ask for a meeting. So when you ask the meeting scheduling to stop on, it means that basically there you want people to actually finish up accepting or rejecting. Usually you would send a communication in order to do so, and they will be able to accept or reject meetings, and no more new meetings would be requested. Normally, this would be probably 2 or 3 days before the event. I'm going to put it's going to be on the 23rd at 12. And also, if you're going to have a table assignation, which I'm going to speak a bit more about it later, but basically a table assignation is a process that we do in Eventtia. It's done through our help email, help@eventtia.com, where you give us the number of tables that you will have in your event, and we can create an algorithm in order to assign those tables for the location of each and every different meeting. So basically, if you have that assignation of tables, you want the meeting scheduling to stop on before that assignation of tables. And then as for the meeting duration, we can define how many minutes. It is important to take into account that the meeting duration is going to be the whole meeting time without taking into account change of table, for instance. So for instance, if your meetings are 20 minutes, you will probably like to make it 25 minutes, so people have 5 minutes to move between tables. Or if the meetings are 15, then leave it 20. We highly recommend you to put 5 more minutes than the actual time for the meeting, so that people will have time to move up, right? Okay. So when I click here on save, I'm going to finish up my general information setup. And as you have seen, once I save this, I have like 5 or 6 different tabs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different tabs, which I will be using for the networking. So we're going to go back to the presentation, and we already, as you saw in 5 minutes, built a B2b session with the name, a location, some dates, some time slots, and some meeting duration. Now our next step will be to actually create networking profiles, giving them a name, setting up a networking form, setting up also some time restrictions, seeing how the meeting notifications are going to appear, and setting them into business categories. So if we come back here to the same place where we left, we can click on the second tab and start doing the networking profiles and creating all the stuff that I just read to you. So if we click here to start creating your profile, your networking profiles, you will be able to set up a networking profile. So I'm going to set up one networking profile, and then this would be the same exact process for the other. Okay. So I'm going to give it a name. Let's say I'm going to call it buyers. I can give it a price. I'm going to leave it in 0, but if there's a specific or a further price in order to be part of a networking, you can put a price only for the networking, like as if it was another activity. Okay, I can put the agenda start and end date for that specific networking profile. So I can put, let's say, 26th of June for the networking, and then for this networking profile, only the afternoon of the 26th of June. Okay, so you can have different time frames in the very different steps. I can later on, after giving my start and end date, in this case I'm going to say the same, I can say whether it needs location or it doesn't. If I click on needs location, it means that I will assign fixed kind of stands or tables or places to a specific group of or a specific networking profile. For instance, all the buyers have their own fixed place. So every time that somebody makes a meeting with the buyers, they will go to the table of the buyer. Otherwise, you can use the algorithm that I talked to you about, which is just having 40 random tables assigned every time frame. And here we can also say whether we want to block time slots. We want the attendees to be able to block time slots. And this is going to be different from a time restriction, because time restrictions are for everybody. Time slots blocking is for any person that wants to use it. So for instance, if the person's coming late on the 25th, if he's coming at 11 p.m., he will be able to block the timeframes from 9 to 11 p.m. so nobody asks for meetings at those times. So that is the can block time slots functionality. Okay, now it's time to tell you the case that we are going to manage here so you have everything clear and so it's easy to understand. We're going to say in this moment that we have some buyers and the buyers are hotels. They're hotels that are searching for providers and the providers are fast food restaurants. I selected this case because it is quite easy to identify the different hotel chains and fast food chains like McDonald's, Subway, Taco Bell, and Hilton, Westin, Ibis. So basically, that's why we're doing it because it's easy to identify. So we're saying buyers are hotels and providers are fast food chains. So in this case, we're going to say, yeah, for instance, one hotel is coming late for the meeting. So because like he already knows that, so he can block the time slots so nobody asks him on the first or first two meetings. Okay. Okay, continuing with this, we can then select the attendee types that will be part of these networking profiles. You can select various different attendee types to be part of the networking profiles. So you can actually have 3 or 4 different attendee types inside a networking profile, but only one attendee type, like only the attendee types can only be associated to one networking profile. So I can have here buyers 1, buyers 2, buyers 3, buyers 4, but buyers 1 to 3 and 4, they can only be inside this buyers networking profile. They cannot be in another networking profile because that's how permissions are going to be set up. That's going to be the easiest way to set up your B2b session. So if we click here on buyers networking session, because we have here buyers, we're going to associate the buyers networking session attendee type to the buyers networking profile. So it's important to make that difference, but I think it's quite clear. Ones are attendee types and they can be as many as they want in the profiles, but they can only be in one of the profiles, each one of them. I can also enable the I'm offering and I'm looking for modes. In this case, it's quite clear though that the buyers are actually looking for, but in some cases it's not that clear. So you can select them. Okay, it's just selecting it, and it's going to be good to select them if you want to be able to use some filters. Okay, so let's say I'm gonna leave the I'm looking for, and I'm gonna save this. Once I save this, there are 2 new things that will appear. They can request meetings too, and the optional registration. So they can request meetings too. You're going to set this at the very end because normally you'll create one, then you'll create another. But when you have the different profiles, you're going to see here buyers and providers. So buyers won't be able to meet with buyers in my event. In other events that could be good, but in my event they're going to be able to meet with providers only. So I'm going to leave buyers here just without selecting it. And once I create providers, they'll appear here and I can select providers. And as for the attendee types optional registration, if I click here on, it will make the registration optional, meaning that the person that's registering to the event will decide whether he's going to participate in the networking or not. This is especially important in events that are not only based on B2B networking sessions, where, for instance, the B2B session is just a complementary activity, so they can decide whether they want to be there or not. In my case, I'm going to say that this is a complete B2B session activity, so I'm not going to leave it optional. But if you leave it optional, that's going to be fine. And by the way, this is a little life hack. If you're going to import some list of attendees for the networking, it's better to leave it optional. Then you can import the attendees and then you can turn it back on to off. But you cannot import if the networking session is mandatory. Okay. If you have any questions regarding that, you can contact our support center. All right. Then we can come here and check the networking form. So the networking form is quite similar to the registration form. The difference is that normally they're going to have, as I showed you in the first form, they're going to have to ask directly for company and logo, and here you can determine whether it's required or not. Um, then they're going to ask for the username and password. And what I can add is other information that is important for me. So if I click here on new, I'll be able to add any type of information that I want. So for instance, I can say, what is your annual budget? and I can say, okay, it's from 0 to 10,000. I'm going to divide this by a point. From 10,000, remember that the comma is going to divide the list from 10,000 to 100,000. Then we're going to say from 100,000 to 1 million. Yep. And then I'm going to say more than 1 million. All right. Why do I do this in a drop-down list? Because this way I will be able also to filter by this field. So if I click here in filter by this field, people will actually be able to select, okay, I want to know how many companies are from 10,000 to 100,000 annual budget, and being able to filter that. I could also leave it as a text area, but I wouldn't be able to filter with that kind of requirement. I can also make it mandatory if I click in is required or not. So depending on whether that information you really want it to appear publicly or not, or you really want to collect it. And also you can display field on public profile or not. So maybe you don't want to collect it for your event, but you don't want it to be public. So you can do this. You can really play with this. In this case, we're going to say that this is required, the annual budget, that people can filter by that field, and that it's going to appear on the public profile. So when I click here on save, it's going to appear there, and I'm going to see the drop-down list. Okay. And I can create several different other types of drop-down lists. I can, or different tags. So I can put labels. I can put files. For instance, I can ask for services portfolio or something like that. Services portfolio, for instance, and I can make it required. And I wouldn't filter it by this field because everyone will be different. But then I will be able to open up some files and paste them and so on. I'm just going to take this off because it's not that relevant in this moment. But as I was just showing you, you have basically the same type of fields that you have for the registration form. You've got text fields, text area, drop-down lists, multiple selection, lists, cities, images, files, labels, etc., etc. So that's going to be quite useful for you guys, so you can collect all the information. After setting up the networking form, you can see the networking notifications. There's actually not very much to change here rather than the title. So you can say instead of new meeting requests, you can say somebody request a meeting for you and then participant name tag. And basically what's going to happen is if for instance I got requested a meeting, I'm going to receive an email that says new meeting request from X person, and they'll tell me, hi Santiago, you have a new meeting requests. I'll get the host message that the person will write to request the meeting, and I'll get the participant details with the logo, name, the company, and the participant type, and I'm going to see when the meeting was asked and where. I can click here to confirm or reject meeting. So that's for the meeting request email. And then once the meeting gets accepted, both of the attendees will receive the meeting acceptance email. So here you can also change the title if you want, and you'll receive basically the same, but without the option of accepting, but it's just going to say it has been confirmed. And if it is rejected, it's going to be as well, your meeting has been declined. All right. So that's how the meeting notifications are going to work. You have three: request, acceptance, and rejection. Request is only for the person who was requested a meeting, and then the acceptance one is going to be uh, delivered to both of the parties that are involved in that meeting. So the one who requested and the one who accepted, or in this case also rejected. So when I've finish up with my meeting notifications, which are request emails, acceptance email, and rejection emails, I can go ahead and see the time restrictions. So just so you know, the time restrictions are different timeframes in which nobody can ask for a meeting. So they're going to be useful for lunch or post times or even like nights times. So if I click here on new time restriction, I will be able to set it up. I will be able to say, for instance, that from 12 to 2 p.m. there's going to be a lunch on the 25th, and nobody will be able to make any meeting requests on that time frame. I can also say, for instance, that from 6 p.m. of the 25th of June to 9 a.m. of the 26th of June, I will make another meeting or time restriction, because of course people are going to sleep, so there shouldn't be any meetings in midnight or in the very early morning. And then I can also make a third one for the next day lunch. And here you have the 3 different time restrictions for your networking profiles. So these time restrictions are going to be very useful if you actually have some post times or lunch times or times in which nobody needs to be making meetings, or if, for instance, there is a conference in between the B2B networking meeting sessions. So you can put these time restrictions, and they will restrict the times in which the calendar coincides, or the timeframes coincide with the meeting timeframes. So yeah, basically here there's going to be like 5 or 6 meetings that will not be happening because there's something else going on. Okay, that's it for the time restrictions. Let's go back to our presentation. So we have here the name, the networking form, time restrictions, meaning notifications. We already saw that. And then now let's move on to the categories. Categories are a new tab. And in categories, you can determine whether you want 1 level or 2 level categories. If you put 1 level, it's only going to activate 1 level. If you put 2 levels, it's going to activate all the 2 levels. If you make 2 levels, but you only have here 1 level, it's only going to appear 1 level. So it's important that if you have 2 levels, you actually select this. And for the category names, we can just put, in this case, we're just going to say we have 2, fast food chains and hotels. But in many other cases, you do have many more categories. It's quite easy to create them. You just put the category name, you can edit them or delete them, and it's going to be already there. And then I'm going to show you later in a bit how can you use the categories to make some filtering of the information and of the participants. But basically, these categories will be quite useful for you guys to select the different to select the different categories that you set up. In this case, the fast food chains or the hotels. Okay. Let me get back to the presentation, to the actual presentation. That's good. So yeah, we already saw how to create a networking profile with a name, networking form, time restriction, meeting notifications, and business categories. And now let's go ahead and see the attendees views, what your attendees are going to see. And after that, the 5th step will be the admin's view, so what you are going to see. So let's see what your attendees are going to see, which are basically the login, the dashboard, how to request, accept, or cancel meetings. So basically, once your attendees have their username and passwords, they will be able to log in. They come here, they put their username and password, and they will enter the networking space, in which they have 3 different sections. The first of them is my profile. As you can see here, they can make any changes that they want to their profile that will be displayed on the public profile. So they can change their logo, their name, they can change anything they need, including the registration form information. The second section would be my agenda, in which they will be able to see the dates, how many meetings have been accepted, how many meetings are to be confirmed, and then the next day as well. And they will be able to enter there, block their slots also, and print their agendas. And in the participants part, they'll be able to see the participants, filter them, select them, and ask for meetings with the participants. So if we come here to my agenda, you'll have 2 different dates, June 25th and 26th. You will be able to deselect the availability space, so you can block the time slots. If you don't have that selected, it won't appear like that. It will just appear without the button, but it will say if it's available or not. You can change the date here. You can see your profile here. Here up in this button, which you don't see very well, but up on this button, that's the print agenda button where you can print, of course, your agenda. If you have available time, it's going to appear in blue like in here. If the meetings have been confirmed, it's going to appear in purple like in here. And if you are waiting for the participants confirmation, it's going to appear in yellow. If the participants are waiting for your confirmation, then you will have here a cancel and accept button, so you can accept it also from the networking space. So you can either accept it through the email or through the networking space, however you'd like. And then if we come to participants, which was the third part, the third section, you will be able to search by company. You will be able to filter by country, by free slots, and also by the questions that you activated to be able to filter by. So for instance, what is your annual budget? So as I told you, we have two different networking profiles, buyers and providers. Buyers are hotels, providers, which appear here mainly, are fast food chains. So if I want to make a meeting, for instance, with Taco Bell, I will click here on request meeting, and I will be able to open up the meeting timeframes of Taco Bell. I will be able to see when is Taco Bell not available, when is Taco Bell available, and I can request a meeting. And once I request the meeting, I will see this image where it says that I'm pending approval for a certain meeting, okay? So that's the way I request the meeting. And when I request the meeting, when I click on request meeting, I'll have who I'm requesting the meeting to. I'll have the date and the time, and I can put a meeting request message such as, hello, Mr. John Howard. I would really like to have a meeting with you. Thank you very much. Best. Or whatever I want to put as an attendee. Okay, so they can actually kind of customize it as they want. And then I can click here on request as an attendee, and that's it. I'm gonna have a meeting requested. And then for accepting a meeting, I will open my agenda and I will see the options to accept or cancel the meetings. So if I click here on accept meeting, I will of course accept it, and it's going to pass from yellow to purple here. So that's it for what your attendees are going to view. Now let's get to see what you are going to view while the session is going on. So now we're going to suppose that we launched the session. So we already set up this networking session. We launched it. Our participants filled up their registration networking forms. They have their credentials. They started coming to log in, and they're starting making meetings. And you want to know how it's going on. So I'm going to come here now to my actual real networking session, and I'm going to show you these three tabs: participants, book meetings, and free slots. So let's get started with participants. So as I told you, your participants have already been making meetings and they have already been activated in your event. You have been sharing with them the communications and informing them about the networking. And now you're going to search how is it going on. So you can come here to participants and search for the companies. So for instance, I can put Hilton and click on search, and I'll get Hilton by name. Or I can just put like I and see how many have an I, and I'll get all these I's. Okay. I can always reset when I want it to be on the main screen. I can search, for instance, which country they're coming from. So let's say how many companies are coming from Colombia. So we have here 4 companies that are coming from Colombia. Let's say we want to know how many companies are coming from France. So if I click on France and I search, I'm going to have 1 company coming from France, and so on. Okay. Again, I can reset, and I can also do it by participant type. So I want to see the buyers. I have here 6 hotels. And I want to see the providers, and I'll have here 6 fast food chains. Okay. And finally, I can also, depending on which participant type I select, I can also search for the other information. So for instance, I have here, what is your annual budget? So I can actually search for that. And I can click on search and see which companies have an annual budget that is 100,000 to 500,000 and which are buyers. Okay. So that's quite easy as well. I can also do it through the categories. So if I click on participants offering, I can see, okay, which ones are offering fast food chains, and I'll see how many are inside those categories, or which ones are looking for hotels, and I can search on those categories. Okay, in this case they're not appearing because they are not selecting these categories, but this is how you can put the categories as filters and do all of that to research. So in the end I can say which are the buyers from 100,000 to 500,000, which are based in Colombia and are offering or whatever, and I can search and I will get very specific views. This is essential when you have events where you have more than 100 different networking participants and you are really searching for good strategic partners that are the size that you want and the type that you want or the country that you want and so on. Something that's really nice also is that you can see how many meetings have been accepted, rejected, and requested by each and every one of the different attendees. So that's also quite cool. And you will be able as well to do some management of that for them if you want to. So if you, for instance, think that there are not so many meetings and you want to give them a help, you can, let's say, go to the buyers and enter as Westin, and you can request a meeting from a provider to Westin. So you can say, okay, provider Pizza Hut is going to request a meeting to Westin, which says, hi, I would like to have a meeting. And here, as opposed to the other to your attendees can only request. You can actually send the email to them if you want, and you can request and confirm as well. So if I click here on request and confirm, it's going to be already confirmed. Here it says that host already has a meeting, so I can just search for another one. Let's say Subway and do it. Um, but and the system is going to tell you whether there's a meeting or there's free slots. Basically, here everybody has set up a meeting, but you can, as I show you, put the requester and put either request and confirm or put just request. Okay, and you can also send them the email. So you can do it for them. You can also cancel meetings for them. You can also deselect availability on sometimes for them, and you can check the different timeframes and meetings that they have. You can also print their agenda. So you can click here on print agenda in actions, and you can open it up and you'll see the agenda for Chester Jackson from Westin for the 25th of June and for the 26th of June with the different companies, the different timeframes. So we searched and we already saw the part of the participants. Now we can go ahead and see the booked meetings and the free slots. Let's take a look at that. So if we come here to book meetings after doing all this search on the participants, I will be able to select the status of the meeting. Let's say who has requested meetings and by participant types, and I will be able to see the answers. For in this case, all meetings have been accepted or rejected. So I can also search, okay, who has accepted meetings from the buyers, and I can come down here and see how many. So there are 33 different meetings accepted, and I can also export them to Excel. I can also see, for instance, how many meetings have been accepted by Hilton. Just 1 second. So if I put here, let's say, yeah, Hilton, how many meetings have been accepted? It says it's an error because probably Hilton is a provider. So let's search on that. Let's put Ibis to have an example. Okay, it's sending an error, but probably it is because of a mistake here in the companies. But as you can see here, I can see the accepted meetings of the providers, the rejected meetings of the providers, and so on. And I can come back here to participant types, and I can basically filter by the different participants and by status and so on. And I can export all of this to Excel. I can also search for free slots. So I can say, okay, which buyers are free from 10:20 to 10:40 a.m. I can search it and see which of them are. I can search it on the PM's part, so all of them are available on that time frame. I can also do so for the providers and search who is available on that time, which is going to be quite useful if you, for instance, want to know which are the time frames that are very busy and which ones are not that busy. You can always reset and research again. So that's basically it for participants book meetings and free slots. If we come back to the presentation, we can see that we had already seen how you manage the participants, the book meetings, the free slots. If you have any questions, you can write to help@eventtia.com, our support platform, where we will be very happy to help you. And I wanted to thank you very much for watching this tutorial on how to create a B2B networking session. I hope that it was very useful. There's also one very important thing that is going to be very, very useful for you guys. And it is, if you click here on the help desk, you'll have this part where it says planning your networking events. Here, this video will also appear. And if you download this quick guide for planning your first B2B event, you're going to download the guide that was used to make this webinar. So here you'll see all the steps, very, very detailed, to make a B2B networking event. So this is going to actually be quite important for you. It's going to help you a lot. I'm just doing a screening of that so you can take a look at how many things it has. It has lots of screenshots, it has lots of explanation. So a very good complement to this tutorial is actually reading this article. And as I told you, if you have further questions, we can manage them at help@eventtia.com. So I want to thank you very much for attending, and I hope to see you very soon. Bye bye and have a nice day.